I'm a Ramon Salazar. You're listening to the Gladiator Pixels podcast. Pixel Chat. Die, you worm!
Hello, everybody. This is Shane of the Gradient Pixels podcast, and I'm joined here by Nick.
Hello.
Also of the Gradient Pixels podcast. So it's been quite a long time since we've done a podcast. I feel like we've said that like the last several times we've made a podcast. We always say it in the intro, but
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes stuff happens.
sometimes life gets in the way and you just can't, get around to doing the old podcast. So,
But here we are now. So
yes, we're here. We didn't abandon you guys. So everything's okay in the hood.
Yes.
Yeah, the last time we uploaded a podcast, I think was in June, late June. I don't know if that's when we recorded it or not, but
It was talking about E3, so around that time.
Yeah, probably shortly after E3. But anyway, we're here now. I think the subjects of the podcast is mainly going to be what we've been playing recently, because I can't think of any like super big news stories I'd want to cover that badly.
And one thing I wanted to say right off the top is that I'm still getting over a cold, so if I sound gross, that's why.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll just get right into it.
Get right in, Shane. What have you been playing recently?
Well, I guess I've only been playing one thing a lot recently, even though I have a lot of little playthroughs going that I'm trying to get back to. Actually, no, I have two things. There's one thing I forgot to mention that I did play a lot recently. And then there's one thing I've been playing a lot recently as well. So I'm going to start off by listing every game I currently have a ongoing playthrough that may or may not be dropped. I have Dragon's Dogma. I'm like halfway through that, probably going to drop it. I have Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm probably not going to drop it. I will eventually go back and finish that playthrough. I think I'm like halfway through that one as well. Judgment, which is the new Yakuza game. I think I'm 12 hours into it. I think on average it takes like 25 hours to beat if you're just doing the main campaign. So I do want to go back to that. I just haven't really been in a Yakuza mood, and I think Judgment is not it's not wowing me enough for me to play it right away. I think the last couple of Yakuza games I've been getting a little tired of it because it feels like it's almost a little bit too much of a low budget affair. Like, Kiwami 1 and 2 were they just kind of felt hastily thrown together. Like, they just felt hastily thrown together. They weren't great remakes or anything. So I'm really waiting for Shin Yakuza to come out and really wow me with new Yakuza content that feels new and different. This feels fun, but it still just feels a little bit too much of the same for me. But I was enjoying it. But I got stopped by something else. I don't remember what I got stopped by. I was playing MK11 for a little while, but I've given up on that game. I just don't feel like playing it at all. I tried to go back to it recently. I tried to get back into playing Jade, and I think I quit just because I just wanted one outfit, and it was just too much of a pain in the ass to unlock.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just can't get into 11 like I did Mortal Kombat 10, unfortunately.
Is the crypt still super bad, or did they fix any of it?
Yeah, I mean they patched it so you could get coins a lot easier. So going through the crypt isn't like too bad, I guess. Like none of the chests cost that much money, but the biggest problem is that all the chests are random for each player. So you can't just like collaborate with people online and say like, oh, if you play as Kano, his chests are here, so you can just get all the costumes that way. They're completely random, and in addition to that, you have to refill the crypt. So even if you buy all the chests in the crypt, that doesn't mean you're gonna, like, if I'm playing as Jade, that doesn't mean I have all the Jade crypt outfits. I might get no Jade crypt outfits, and I have to refill the entire crypt, then start from square one and hope I get her costumes. So that's a problem with it too. It's not like Mortal Kombat 10 or Mortal Kombat 9 where there's like a set end to the crypt.
Yeah.
It just goes on for a while until you collect everything. I think you need to refill everything twice, because I think there's like 200 chests or something in the first crypt you do. Then you refill it until it gets up to like 600.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just quit playing it. I just couldn't find anyone I really wanted to play as. Practicing as Melina for several months, then not having her in the game really sucked. And I just couldn't find a good replacement. So when MK12 comes out, I may be there for it, assuming Melina's back in the game and she's top tier. Yeah, sorry for that little cut there, folks. My mic just fell out of its stand, so that was a little bit awkward. But yeah, there's just not really much attracting me to MK11 anymore. So I gave up and I uninstalled it. But I don't feel too bad about it because I got it for I think like $20 because I had like an Amazon gift card. So it's really no skin off my back. And then I think we are arriving to the games. No, there's 2 other games that I started playthroughs of, and then no, there's actually like 3 more. I'm still going through Ace Attorney 1. I really have to be in the right mood to play that game because it's pretty much just like reading a book. There's not a whole lot of gameplay. The gameplay that's there is fun, but it is more like a visual novel, so you have to be in the mood for that. I started No, it wasn't Link's Awakening. It was Oracle of Ages. And I've never played that game before. I've played most of the mainline Zelda games, but I decided to try and play a new one instead of just replaying like one I've played before. I think I got to like the 3rd dungeon, and the game was asking me to do a bunch of crap just to get to the next dungeon, and it pissed me off. Like, there was like a really annoying fetch quest where you had to keep going to the past, to the future, to the past, to the future, and talking with all these people, and then they give you like a vague answer for who you're supposed to talk to next. And after you did all that and you made a raft, then you got kidnapped by these like imps and they stole all your weapons. Then you had to go through this mini dungeon. I don't know. I got annoyed and wanted to stop playing it.
I played a little bit of Ages, but I didn't even get very far. I think I was in like the first dungeon and I had stopped when I had started playing. I played most of Oracle of Seasons. I think I got all the way to the end. Maybe I beat it. I don't really remember, to be honest. But Seasons felt better to me than Ages, I guess. Yeah, like you said, Ages just couldn't really hold my attention.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I guess it also felt a little too similar to Link's Awakening to me. I don't know, it just felt too much like a rehash. But it's not a bad game from what I played. I started playing the Wind Waker a little bit too, but I think even from the moment I put the disc in, I knew like I wasn't really committed to it. So I got to Dragon Roost Island and I stopped. And that also leads me back to Twilight Princess, which was one of the main games I was playing. I already finished it. So I finished that game, and the other main game I spent a lot of time playing is Dragon Quest Heroes 1, The World Trees Woe and the Blight Below, which is almost like a Kingdom Hearts title.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'll start with Twilight Princess because that one's all done. Actually, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 is done too, but I digress. I played Twilight Princess first, so I will talk about it first. So when this game first came out, I was obsessed with it, and it was like by far my favorite Zelda game, barring Ocarina of Time, which will pretty much always be my favorite because of nostalgia reasons, and it was the first Zelda game I ever played. It was probably the first thing Nick and I bonded over in like kindergarten.
Yeah, all the way back then.
So it's a very, very important game to me, so that one will probably never be beat, but I did love Twilight Princess for all the reasons that most people liked it, because it was a bit edgier. At the time, I hated the Wind Waker art style. I thought it was too kiddie. I thought it looked stupid, and I just wanted a realistic, gritty Zelda game, which is what we got. I loved the dungeons in that game. Thought the story was cool. Thought Midna was cool. Just loved the whole thing. But as the years went by, I started to have more of a negative opinion of it because I thought the overworld was really shitty. Thought the game took a really long time to really get rolling. A lot of the Wolfling parts kind of pissed me off. I didn't like Ilia, who was Link's love interest in that game. Never liked her, never liked how much the game pushed her. There was just little things that like really irritated me about the game, and I felt like every time I played it I would shit on it. Like also, you know, like the side quest, there's the side quest where you collect the little bugs for Agatha, which I just thought was kind of a shitty quest compared to some of the other ones that have been in the series before. There's the Poe quest, which I thought was also kind of annoying. Just a lot of negatives that I would tend to focus on whenever I played Twilight Princess. And the last time I played Twilight Princess up until this point was when the HD collection, or the HD version, was released. I don't remember when it was released actually, maybe 2016 or 2015 or something.
Yeah, sometime around then.
But that was the last time I played it, and I think I only got like almost halfway through. I think I got to like the Gerudo Desert and then I stopped. But for whatever reason, I just really wanted to play Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. It was one of those perfect moments that I wish would happen more often with games where it's like I just know immediately the game I want to play. I know I want to play it and just finish it all the way through, and I put the game in. I don't really take breaks from it. I just play it every day and for like the same amount of time and just thoroughly enjoy it the entire way through and get like almost 100% it and then just put it back on my shelf and feel perfectly satisfied. That rarely happens with me, as evidenced by the fact that I have like a million games going. I didn't even mention another Ninja Gaiden 2 playthrough. I also started Max Payne 1 again, I guess, because I got a new computer, which I'll talk about later. I also started playing Condemned. Like I said, it's like a huge clusterfuck of things that I either need to drop or finish. But, yeah, and it really gave... This playthrough gave me a new appreciation of Twilight Princess, because a lot of the problems I had with it are still problems that I would still bring up with it. Like, I think the Agatha quest is kind of crappy. The Poe souls can be a little bit annoying, even though they made it a bit easier in the new version, because at least in this version there's like a Poe lantern that lets you know if there's Poes in the area you're exploring. So that is very helpful, and I did it all without a guide and everything, so it wasn't too bad. But I think especially after playing Breath of the Wild, which may have been the last big Zelda game I played. I don't know if I did a playthrough of like Wind Waker or anything since then. Maybe I did, but I feel like that was the last big Zelda game I played, and I was kind of disappointed by that one, as I've mentioned before on the podcast, because Zelda, I think, means a lot of different things to different people. So for some people, they really like the story, or they may really like the dungeons, or, you know, what have you. For me, the most important thing was the dungeons, for sure, and all the cool weapons and gadgets you get in all the dungeons, and I felt that Breath of the Wild did not really have that. I didn't really like the open world that much, so I was kind of disappointed in that game. So I think I really wanted to play Twilight Princess because one thing I knew wouldn't let me down would be the dungeons, because that's one thing everybody agrees, you know, that game has really cool dungeons. And yeah, they were all thoroughly satisfying. I don't think there's one bad dungeon in that game. They're all fun. None of them really pissed me off or anything. The puzzles were intuitive and fun to figure out, even though I played the game many times before. There was especially a few standouts, the biggest one probably being Snow Peak, which is probably like one of my at least top 5 dungeon in the entire series, just because they did something really unique with it. You know, that dungeon is set in like a snowy mansion out in the middle of nowhere, and there's like a funny twist on like getting the boss key, where, you know, you meet these 2 snowmen, one's a woman, one's a man, they're like husband and wife, and she'll be like, oh yeah, you need the boss key to get the Fuse Shadow or whatever. Oh, it's down this hallway. And then you go down the hallway and you get like a pumpkin, and you're like, okay, what the hell? And you go back to the kitchen, and the big snowman like pushes Link over and throws it into his soup, and then you can drink the soup to replenish hearts and everything. And there's just kind of this little funny quest that goes on in that dungeon, along with being set in a mansion, rather than just a dungeon designed for the purpose of you conquering the dungeon. It does kind of feel like a lived-in space. For the most part, it does feel a little bit like a dungeon, but
Yeah.
what can you do? So that dungeon was really cool.
I mean, instead of it being like a stone temple or something like
Yeah,
that.
which I have no
it's a
problem
mansion.
with, but it is cool when they try to go the extra mile and make it feel like someone actually like lives here, because the Zelda series generally doesn't do that too often. And I would say the other big highlight was probably Hyrule Castle, just because of the aesthetic itself. It's very intimidating. It's very tall. It looks like a real castle, unlike the one in Ocarina of Time is of course legendary, but it just kind of looks like a dinky little tower in comparison. This one is like a big tower. It's raining outside, just like Ocarina of Time. The music gets louder and louder as you ascend the tower, and the final fight with Ganondorf is a lot of fun too.
One thing I will say on the dungeons in Twilight Princess, and you've sort of already alluded to it though, is that each of them, in this game in particular, have their own very distinct personality, and a bunch of just moments that stick out to me. Like, I love in the water temple in this game when you like drop down that tube and then into the water and use the iron boots to sink into the arena.
Yeah.
Like, just seeing that is so cool. The city in the sky having like that air temple and having to use the double claw shots to like go up and fight a dragon. Like, you know,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of moments in Twilight Princess that are very unique to that game, and I think the style does do a lot to help in making these dungeons and other areas look really cool.
Yeah.
And I also really like the how, I don't know how intentional this was, but especially comparing it to Ocarina of Time, it feels like in particular Twilight Princess is the same world, just aged like a lot more. Like, one of my favorite moments still to this day is when you find the Temple of Time and it's all in ruins, and then eventually like you open up whatever thing, you put the Master Sword in, and it opens up and it's like the old Temple of Time, like through basically like this portal almost, it seems.
Yeah.
And just there's so many really cool moments of environmental storytelling that you can get from the game.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, you probably didn't intend to say this. I don't know if you did, but I mean, it is the world that takes place like after Ocarina of Time, I guess. So it's the world. It like takes place after Majora's Mask, because we know there's like the timeline shift. You know, like the adult Link timeline. He goes back to the past, and then Ganon comes back and floods the world, and then Wind Waker happens. This takes place in the timeline where he comes back to the past. He goes on his quest to Majora's Mask, and eventually becomes, I guess, a Stalfos. Because the hero Shade, who's like a skeleton who teaches you moves, is actually the Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora, which is pretty cool. So it does take place in the same universe and everything, which is pretty badass. And like Nick said, there's just a lot of really, really cool moments throughout the entire game, whether it's in dungeons or in cutscenes or whatever. It's really, really badass. And there's a lot of things that are super unique to the game, not just, you know, being in wolf form, but I think the way they did the Twilight Realm with like the old, like digital squares floating around is pretty unique and very interesting. I like how the shadow beasts look and just stuff like that I thought they did a really nice job on. And I think a lot of the complaints that I have still hold true. I already mentioned the side quest, but a big complaint that everybody has with that game is that it feels way too much like Ocarina of Time, to the point where it like almost doesn't have its own identity. And that is possibly the biggest problem with the game. It really does not feel like it has its own distinct identity. It feels like it's hanging on a little too hard to Ocarina. But nevertheless, it didn't impact my enjoyment too much, but I do think it holds that game back quite a bit. And while I enjoy it as much as something like Majora or Ocarina or what have you, I think I respect it a bit less than those games, because Ocarina, for instance, ushered the Zelda series into a new era, the 3D era, and they got so much right with that game. Even to this day, that game still has so many moments that I feel like haven't been topped in the series. Like, even when they tried to top the Hyrule Castle moment, I still don't think it's as cool as Ocarina's, when, you know, you slowly ascend it and you hear the organ getting louder and louder, and then you fight Ganon. The entire tower is coming down around you, and you and Zelda have to get out of there, and then, you know, it starts fucking thunder and lightning and raining, and he turns into a beast and you fight him while Zelda screams if you get hit and shit. Like, that's insane. I can't believe they did that back in 1998 or whatever. Like, that shit, like, that's the type of stuff like Souls games is doing now, and people are like wetting their pants about it, and they were doing that all the way back then.
Yeah.
It's just that's still an incredible game, even though it's, you know, obviously aged in a lot of ways, but that game is fucking amazing. And then Majora's Mask, like, I can't believe like how experimental that game was. Like, they just went off the fucking walls with it, with the time stuff, with the mask stuff, and I've never even played a game remotely similar to Majora's Mask, and that's a fucking cool game. It's not like it's a bad game, so nobody wanted to repeat it. I think it was just a really hard game to do again, and it was so unique that everybody would know that you're copying off Majora's Mask if you try to do mask transformations and the day-night cycle and all this crazy stuff. And that game also had a really cool story, very cool side quests, just a lot of cool stuff. Majora's Mask is a badass game. It's amazing that they were able to create that in like a little over a year, I think, after Ocarina, and it turned out so well. It's pretty crazy. And then you have Wind Waker, which Wind Waker is one of my favorites, but I mean that game has problems too. You know, it has lots of problems. I mean the dungeons are kind of shitty. They're not bad dungeons, but they're all really easy. The sailing can get a little tedious, blah blah blah. But once again, that game took a big risk with the art style, which paid off in spades years later as we look back on it, because that game has aged a lot better than Twilight Princess did. Has a really really cool story. My favorite soundtrack in the series probably. The sailing is super unique, you know. So even if you don't like that game, I still think people can appreciate how original it was and just crazy out there.
Sailing was way ahead of its time too. I mean, like just now we're getting a lot of like seafaring games that.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean,
years ago.
It took a long time to get to that point, you know. Like you said, it's only just now that we see games like Assassin's Creed Black Flag trying to do that. Like, it felt like nobody tried it after Wind Waker for years.
Sea of Thieves, Skull of Bones, those type of games.
Yeah, so the fact that Nintendo was doing it back then was pretty crazy. And like I said, I think I'm more inclined to forgive games that tried something really weird and new, even if it does have like a lot of problems, than something that is technically more well made but took less risks. Which I think is the problem with Twilight Princess, because it is a really good game, but it felt like maybe they didn't try hard enough to differentiate it. Like even with the wolf gameplay, it doesn't feel as interesting as sailing or the masks or what have you. But I don't know. It's still a fantastic game. I mean that's basically the thing that could be said about every single Zelda game, where like even the worst one, which is probably Skyward Sword, even though looking back on that game, I might like it better than Breath of the Wild, which I know some people would like flip out at that, but that game did have more traditional dungeons, and there's the motion controls and everything, so I guess honestly if I had to replay one, I probably would pick Breath of the Wild. So I think Skyward Sword was still like the worst 3D one besides like the spin-off shit. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that Twilight Princess is a really, really good game. And I'm super happy I went back to it. And like I said, I mean, I got all the hard pieces, got all the pose, got all the bugs and everything, and just had an absolute blast playing that game. Although I guess the conclusion I would reach is that it's fucking fantastic, but I do respect it a bit less than its brothers and sisters, because it does kind of lack an identity of its own, and it doesn't experiment as much as the other games did, which I think was kind of annoying. But I mean, in terms of things I would like to see from Twilight Princess into, say, like a Breath of the Wild 2 or modern Zelda games, one, I would like to see the realistic art style return. Even though Wind Waker's has aged a lot better, I still like the realistic aesthetic. I still think it looks really nice. And back when Wind Waker was doing the cartoon stuff, that was super unique. But nowadays it feels like most games Nintendo makes are kind of cartoony, cel shaded. Ever since like Skyward Sword, it's like every Zelda game has kind of been cutesy. So I almost think it would be, as funny as it is to say, it'd be a bit of fresh air maybe for that series. But that would be a nice thing to see return. I think the dungeons, I mean, there was a shitload of dungeons in that game too. There's at least like 10 or something, and they're all really well designed, really fun to go through, and they had a lot of really cool and unique items. I didn't even mention the spinner, which is a badass item that lets you ride on rails. The unfortunate thing is that you barely use it anywhere else besides the dungeon you get it, which is a problem in the Zelda series. And then there's the Dominion Rod, which allows you to control statues, which is also really cool. The dual claw shots was a really, really cool idea. So yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic game, and I just had an absolute blast with it. Like I said, just one of the rare instances where you know what you want to play, you play it through to the end, and by the end you put it back on your shelf and you say, I am proud to have that game on my shelf, and I am proud that I played it again, and that is a really, really fantastic title. Because, like I was saying earlier too, I felt like I was still in a Zelda mood after I finished it, but then I tried Wind Waker and I was like, I don't think I really wanted to play this game. Then I thought about Majora, and it's like, I don't really want to go with the time mechanic right now. Tried Ages, and then I kind of missed the big budget, like 3D Zelda adventure. So it was just kind of like, I dropped it.
The one thing about Twilight Princess that you mentioned, having unique items, that's the one thing that I do hope returns in future titles, because while you can say that Breath of the Wild has a lot of unique items, they are more so as unique in the terms of a loot system, which none of the other games really have. It's you got your specific item, and it has like a lot of weight and like significance to it. Uh, like the thing that I really like about the tunics in Twilight Princess is like the Zora tunic, like rather than it being in Ocarina of Time when it just was like a color swap, this actually added like little like fins and stuff to it. The magic armor looked like really royal and everything. So I hope we get more significance behind items that you receive in the future games. Again, I don't know, seeing as it is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, I feel like it might be too much to ask to completely redesign like the loot system that they have the game based around.
I think I meant more so like in future Zelda games, like after Breath of the Wild 2. The main thing I hope for Breath of the Wild 2 is that it just has like dungeons again, and I think they just, as I've said many times before, I just want them to bring back bring it back a little bit, because I think they went a little too spastic with the open world design and just doing whatever you want. And the problem with that is that it gains a lot of things, but then it loses a lot of things too if you go too far with it. And I thought that's what they did. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to mention about Twilight Princess. Yes, actually, the combat was really fun in that game. It's really easy, but they at least gave you a lot of different options to mix it up with. You know, like you could do the shield bash and then do like a helm splitter over the enemy's head, or you can sheath your sword and do a mortal draw to kill the enemy. You could roll around the enemy and smack him from the back. Just a lot of little fun things like that I feel like every Zelda game after that kind of had like worse combat. Even though Zelda combat has never been amazing, it was still, I think, at its best in that game.
Remember, in Twilight Princess, doesn't it, when you fight like Dark Nuts, don't like pieces of their armor break off the more damage you do?
Those are really cool enemies because they start to get like faster as the armor breaks off, and then once you get it all the way down, they throw their big sword, and then they start like they have like a rapier, and then they like fight you with that.
That was cool.
Which is those are really cool enemies, and I like how they did that. Yeah, so I mean, in conclusion, I would say like Twilight Princess is a fucking awesome game. You should all play it if you haven't. I do recommend the Wii U version because it does make some adjustments to the quests that make it a bit more fun to go through. If you're playing on the Wii U gamepad, you can instantly turn into Wolf Link, which is kind of cool. You can use the touch screen to select your items, which is kind of fun. I mixed it up between like the gamepad and the Pro Controller. The only thing I really preferred about the gamepad was the gyro controls for aiming, which are really, really nice. I remember I played it for like a few hours with the gyro controls, and then the next day I went back with the Pro Controller, and I kept trying to aim it like that, and it wouldn't work, and I was getting so pissed off. But yeah, the game is fantastic. I just think, if they would have experimented more with it, I think it totally could have been like hands down the best Zelda game, but it needs to have the same mindset that Wind Waker or Majora did. Because the thing with Ocarina is that even though you could argue it's not as weird and out there as those games, it was still like the first to bring it into the 3D era and had a lot of its own ideas. There was a lot of fresh ground it had to traverse, so that's why it deserves all the respect it gets, even though it didn't get quite as out there as Majora or whatever. That game was still pretty fucking amazing. And same with Mario 64, actually. I know it's kind of a random topic to jump to, but it's pretty amazing how like they just nailed it so hard on that first attempt that like if you play Mario Odyssey nowadays, he still has like the same moveset as when it first launched in 1997 or 1996, whatever it was. So it's just crazy how well Nintendo nailed that. And I have to say, going back to a lot of those early 3D games, they are not that fun to play. I've heard that from a lot of people, whether it's about GoldenEye. A lot of people liked that game when it came out, and it's kind of like hot dog shit nowadays. A lot of people really like Jet Force Gemini. I've heard from people that have went back and played it that it really isn't very good anymore. I've never really liked the Rare collectathons. I know a lot of people get mad at me because I know people still really like Rare. They're excited for Banjo and Smash, and I am too. But from what I played of Banjo, I really did not like the loop of just walking around a level collecting notes. I think it was a lot less interesting than what Mario was doing. Conquer is a cool game, but there's many parts, especially in the 64 version, that can really, really piss you off. So yeah, there's just a lot of old games like that that haven't aged well compared to Zelda or Mario. So kudos to Nintendo for getting so much right on the first try. It's pretty incredible. But anyway, I'm probably going to hand it over to Nick for a little while because I think I said pretty much everything I wanted to about Twilight Princess. I think the only other thing I would add is that Midna was like by far the best companion we've ever had in the series. She was not annoying. She was a cool character, and I didn't mind when she interrupted. And I don't know how they go from that to Fee, which was so bad. I don't want to talk about Fee because we're going to be here for like an hour talking about how bad she was. If they ever release Skyward Sword, the number one change I would make is to mute Fee. They should have an option to mute her or to have her almost never pop up because she was just ridiculous in that game and it was terrible. So anyway, I think that's all we have for the Zelda discussion for now. So I'll send it over to Nick. Let's hear what he's been playing for a bit, and then we will talk about Dragon Quest, not just Heroes 2 a little bit, and Builders, and just Dragon Quest goodness. We just played the Hero, who just launched for Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers, yeah.
It was super, super fun. So I have a lot of Dragon Quest goodness to speak with you all about, which I'm sure you're all excited about. So let's listen to Nick drone on about whatever he's going to drone on about, and then we'll get to the good stuff. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What has Nick been playing?
I have a little card here because I started keeping track because I got in another one of my backlog sprints where I wanted to just go through and try to play a bunch of stuff that I've been meaning to play for a while. A while ago on PlayStation Plus, they gave away, I guess, the intro to the Hitman reboot that came out a couple years ago.
That's bullshit that it's only the intro because that...
Yeah, I thought it was the full game,
stupid.
but it was only the first mission
Wasn't
that
that
they
on
gave.
PS Plus?
Yeah.
That's so dumb. It's like false advertising. That's bullshit.
That was kind of weird. I don't know if it was like... I mean, it must have been one of the games that they were like headlining for it. But it was the one that was released in episodes, not the sequel. The sequel that came out to it was a full game, and then you could also get all of the original levels in that game. But this was just the first one, and I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because, boy, this game, despite it being a couple years old already, this level was honestly, like, amazing. Like, I only played through it one time, but the thing is that, like a lot of the Hitman games, that I've only played a couple of them, but I've seen a few others played online, so I have a pretty good idea of the series. The levels that they have in some of these games are so creative, and I think they went to a whole nother level with these reboots because they've really dug into alright, Hitman's not, like, I mean, he's an assassin and everything, but the game is about being kind of goofy and creative ways of figuring out how to take out targets and exploring environments. And so this first level is really cool. I should re-download the game to let you try it out later, Shane, because
didn't I play it with you?
You played the tutorial. There's a tutorial, and then there's the first mission.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, like, the tutorial itself was a ton of fun, because I think that was the first Hitman game I've ever really played. I may have played a bit of Blood Money. Did you ever own that game?
I never owned it, no.
Then yeah, I never played it. I think I just watched people play it on YouTube, but yeah, I had a fucking blast playing it. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, there's the tutorial, which is basically Agent 47 going through like his actual training when he's becoming a member of whatever organization it is. I don't really remember at this point what it is. But the first mission takes place in basically I believe it's in Europe, and it's a fashion show in this very like ornate building and everything. And it's a black tie event. Agent 47 gets an invitation. You walk in, and the first thing you notice, or the first thing is that there's a spotlight on the stairway, and you have two targets that are, like, I believe, related in some way. They may be a husband and wife or brother sister, I forget. But basically, you see the one target start to come down, and he's like the person who's putting on this fashion show. And then the woman, she is this like black market sort of person who is like facilitating some sort of illegal trade auction up in the upper part of this environment. But like you can go around, there's massive crowds of people. You go into the back, there's the fashion show, so there's the runway. It's very ornate. They have all these like lights and particles going off, people going back and forth on the runway. There's kitchen areas, there's a bar area that people are hanging out at, there's all these different stairwells. You go up to the second floor, there's a bunch of catering areas, bedrooms, bathrooms, all this sorts of stuff. You go up to the third floor, there's a giant area where this auction is taking place in a whole bunch of other rooms. And then you can go up even further, and there's like windows. You can get out of the window and like shimmy across things to get to different areas. There's different areas that you're not allowed to go in based on what you're wearing. So a big part of the game is like knocking out guards or different people and trying to take their clothes so you can pass and get through different things.
Yeah.
And in some of the games in the past, like I've played Absolution, which apparently doesn't get as well regarded these days, but I enjoyed it. And a big part of that was like you could get a disguise and you could just move sort of freely wherever you want. In these games, they have certain characters they're denoted with a little dot above their head, and basically they are familiar who works in the area, let's say. And so some people, even if you have a disguise, they can see right through that and cause an alert phase. And there's just so many different ways that you can tackle the situation, and the level is just so massive and highly detailed. I was really impressed with it, and it really makes me want to go and pick up Hitman 2 and get all of the content that they've released. NoClip just put out a documentary recently on the story of Hitman and the split that happened from Square Enix within the last year. And that even more so got me excited because I saw more of the levels that they have in that. And it's just so crazy the amount of player agency you have throughout each of the levels. And some of them are just so different because in Hitman 2, the thing that they kept saying in the documentary was that it's basically like this world globe-trotting adventure, and like you'll be like in America one time, then you'll be in like Egypt or something, and then you just bounce all around to these different spots.
And didn't they say like for Hitman 3 they want it to be like an entire like, or I guess maybe by the time they're done they want like you to be able to play like all the levels and then just have like an entire globe-trotting adventure that you can have in one game? Yeah,
they've basically they put a lot of development time up front into making their like it's some sort of network of assassins. I forget what their term for it is, but basically by the end of it I think the intention is to have every level playable because it'll be the same engine and everything. They just keep adding into it. So yeah, I don't have much more to say than that because it was just the first mission. I didn't score particularly well in my run because I did for the first target, I followed a little side quest string to be able to poison his favorite drink at the bar. So I disguised as a bartender and I mixed his drink and everything, and I got that to go well. And then for the second person, I kind of messed up and ended up killing a lot of guards, and it completely tanked my score.
Yeah.
But that was really fun. Another PS Plus game that I played recently is Horizon Chase Turbo. Have you ever heard of this game?
I may have heard of it. I feel like there's a lot of games with the name Horizon in it, so
yeah,
I get confused with all of them nowadays. But
this game is an indie racing game, and the only way I'll really be able to describe it, because the only other racing game I know that's in this style is Outrun. Are you familiar with how Outrun is played?
Yes, I'm actually really familiar with Outrun. I like Outrun a lot.
So I think this is either from someone who was initially attached to Outrun, or they were looking at Outrun as the basis for their gameplay.
Is it a Japanese game?
I don't believe so. I actually think it's a South American game.
Then yeah, they were definitely looking as like a basis then, because that's a Sega game. I don't know. I don't think Toshihiro Nagoshi made that. I don't remember. Toshihiro Nagoshi is Yakuza Man, and he made Daytona. But that is a really good game. I played the original Outrun in the Yakuza arcade machines, which is a lot of fun, and that inspired me to buy Outrun Coast to Coast, which is on PS2, GameCube, Xbox, I think. I bought that on PS2, and that game is fun as hell too. It's like a 3D recreation of the Outrun series. It actually pissed me off because there was a HD version on like the 360 arcade store, but I guess they lost the license and they took it off. So
yeah.
But yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
that's a great series.
I don't have much to say about Horizon Chase Turbo. It's very indie, like the graphic style, like it's very colorful, but it's very plain, and there's not a whole lot of like intricate detail in it. You're collecting like these little coins and races and getting more cars and unlocks and stuff like that. There's a couple different modes, but other than that, it was just sort of a fun racing game. I was more or less just playing that when I was talking with friends and didn't really want to get invested into anything. Like one day I just started playing it and I was like, well, I'll keep playing it. I've already put some time into it. So all around pretty good. It was a good PS Plus game to get. It's not normally the sort of type of racing game that I would go out and buy, but it was fun enough for what it was.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
One game that you and I actually played a little bit of and I continued to finish was Star Fox Zero back on the Nintendo train. Obviously, this game got, I would say, probably a mixed reception when it came out. It seemed like sort of like 7-ish score range. A lot of people naturally complained about the controls because they do this interesting thing of splitting the gameplay between the screen and like more fine aiming on the gamepad. As I played the game, I didn't really have an issue with the controls, save for the final level. The final level is not well designed, in my opinion. It is very cool because, like we've come to, sort of how like Twilight Princess is a retreading of Ocarina of Time, Star Fox Zero is very much a retreading of 64.
Yeah.
It takes a lot from that game, and it adds a couple of cool things. Do you care if I spoil something at the end?
Not really. I'm not that invested in the story of Star Fox.
All right, so we're gonna do a little spoiler alert here, just because I thought this was really cool. In this game, at the end, you do like a level where you fight Star Wolf and everything before you go through this trench run style sequence to get to Andros.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really cool is they added a different sequence before Andros where you're going through this portal to try to basically he teleports his planet away, and you're going through this path that you have these choices of different ways to go, and you don't really know what you're doing. You just sort of pick paths and you're flying around for a bit, but then eventually Star Fox's dad shows up, the one that's been dead, and he's like, just follow me, Fox, and then he shows you the path that you have to take, and it's this really cool moment that like he's like, Dad, like, is that you? And it's this really cool moment that I think added a lot to the story that was missing, because it always just kind of seemed like, oh yeah, he lost his dad, that's why they are kind of enemies, but it added this nice little like father-son moment to it, and he eventually comes back towards the very, very end to help deal the final blow. But yeah, the Andros fight in this game is not designed well. The controls really don't help it in this instance. There's a lot of high damaging hits that he can do, and he takes a lot of damage. There's a lot of like resetting the environment. So when you're fighting in this arena, he'll do an attack that'll just blow you out, and then you have to dodge lasers and then eventually go back in. But you can only find the areas you can enter by looking at the gamepad and finding where they're highlighted. It's a lot of weird stuff.
That sounds really annoying. Well, see, the thing is that Nick and I played a little bit of it with Nick, and I felt the same, where it's like the game is still pretty fun because it's Star Fox, but the controls are just like, this is really unnecessary. Like, it just feels like you
That's a good way to describe it. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a prime example of Miyamoto, like, trying to do something different for the sake of being different rather than because it was actually a good, fun idea. And I think, if they just copied Star Fox 64 again, it would still be disappointing, but at least it would be fun. But yeah, from what I played, I mean, it's still a pretty good game, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you'd ever play it again, but if you like had no interest in it before because people said like, oh, it was really crappy, I would take a look at it again because I think you can get it for pretty cheap nowadays.
It is very cheap now. If you have like a local GameStop around you, which is where I bought it, it's no more than $10. So
yeah, and I was gonna say, like, before I tried it at Nick's, like, I had no interest in it, but after playing it, it's like, I could do a playthrough of that. It seems fun enough.
The environments and the planets are all really cool. I love playing them. sort of like 64, there's alternate routes in a lot of different things and little events that you can trigger that can make your path divert and give you levels that you haven't even played before. Lots of hidden levels and hidden fights that you wouldn't normally access. So there's a lot of cool stuff to like in the game. These two I'll pair together real quick. There's not a whole lot to talk about in the gameplay department with these, but I've sort of been itching to play walking simulators recently, and through Twitch Prime I played Gone Home and Tacoma, which are both made by the same studio. Gone Home is a sort of I won't say a mystery, but it's got some mystery elements. You're this girl who's been away, traveling Europe, basically. You come home and nobody's there, and you're finding these little diary entries and trying to figure out where everybody went. And it tells this cute story about the person you're playing as a sister and a love interest, and it's very much a nostalgia piece. It takes place in the 90s, and there's lots of references to real world things. You can interact with a lot of items in the environment, so like there's parts where you're going through different rooms, and the sister and her friends went and saw Pulp Fiction, so there's like a movie ticket. You can see the theater and like the date that they went. She has a Super Nintendo, and there's a part where the two characters bond over Street Fighter, and there's just a really cool attention to detail where like you can see like a little piece of paper sticking out of like the dresser, and if you pick it up it has like combo commands written on it and stuff like that. So it's just sort of a neat story, and it goes in some directions that you wouldn't really expect. These are basically just narrative focused games. That's the thing that you praise, but I don't want to get super into these to spoil them because that is such a big part of it.
Yeah, I haven't played too many walking simulators. I mean, the only one that really sticks out in my mind is Dear Esther. I mean, that was probably the first one, and that one literally was just you walk, and that is all you do. Dear Esther. I probably played a few other ones, but that one I did play, and I don't regret playing it because it was only a few bucks on PS Plus. But that game felt like it was trying a little bit too hard to be like philosophical, I guess. A lot of the writing was just very over the top, and they used big words from a thesaurus to pretend like they were sounding really important and philosophical, but when you step back and kind of read it, it's like, this is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you really have to be in the right mood for them, I guess. Because, I mean, yeah, depending on the game, like I said, Dear Esther is literally just walking, and the environments are pretty, there's a kind of a cool element of mystery in the game, I guess, but it's not really something fun, I guess.
The one thing
Depends
I
on
will
which one you're playing, yeah.
The one thing I will say about Tacoma, which is their follow-up game, it like right off the surface, it has a much more intriguing location for me. It takes place on this space station that sort of like the house everybody's missing, and you're sent there from this corporation to try to. You're sent there with a task that you have to carry out, basically. But everybody on the space station, they had these AR chips like embedded in their head, and it records where they were in space and also like conversations that they've had. And what the cool gameplay mechanic in this game is that it is a lot of listening to people talking and reading like email entries and stuff like that, but you have control over the time of these interactions. So they'll drop you into this area that will have maybe like 3 or 4 different rooms, let's say. There's one room in particular, there's like a storage closet, a hallway, a gym, a locker room, and another room. And characters, they're all color-coded. They're not really like actual characters, they're more just like polygon models, but they have their own voice acting and their color, so you know who's talking at any given point.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because you can fast forward, rewind, or pause, and you can move around in 3D space. So like you can go to the storage locker, there's 2 people having a conversation in there, while in other rooms people are having their own other conversations, and basically you can go between each of these points, rewind time, manipulate it, and listen to what each person's saying. So it's sort of like you're controlling time to piece together stuff that's happening in completely different spots. And I haven't seen a whole lot of games do that, so I thought that was really interesting. And it tells a more gripping story, I feel, than Gone Home. Gone Home's not bad by any means, but I just think that they did a better job with the overall storytelling and mystery with Tacoma.
Yeah.
So, and then I just have a couple other games that I played real quick that I'll try to rapid fire because I've been chatting for a bit. I played Pro Skater 3, which, yeah, I know a lot of people say that that's like their favorite and it's the best one. I was a little on it, to be honest. I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack is great,
Yeah.
and it's still that great Tony Hawk's Pro Skater gameplay. The levels are really creative and fun, but for whatever reason, the physics in this one, like, I felt like I was bailing a lot on stuff that I shouldn't have been, and like I was clipping through objects, and some of the items that I was trying to get in goals weren't clear at all on how you were supposed to do things and in which areas you can do certain things to get score to complete goals. So I didn't really like that, and it started to piss me off towards the end because I kept bailing so much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that might just be a product of, like, I know the older Tony Hawk games tended to be a little bit more realistic feeling, and I kind of say that lightly because
yeah,
obviously they were never really that realistic. But if you go back and play like Pro Skater 1, it's a lot heavier than like, you know, the Underground games or whatever.
Mhm.
So that might be why. I don't know, but hearing you talk about Tony Hawk does make me really miss that franchise. And I forget who was talking about it. It may have been like the Allies or something, but I think they were talking about like rhythm games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk. And I think they were saying something like the reason why those games aren't around anymore isn't because people got tired of them, really. It's just that there hasn't really been a good one for a long time to get people hyped up again.
Mhm.
I think that's true. I think, you know, I still think Rock Band, for instance, is really fun, but they really haven't done anything with the franchise in a long time. Tony Hawk has had bad games. Skate franchise is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
So there's just no one there to really pick. I mean, there are, like, you know, there's Session and Skater XL, so there's two games that are kind of inspired by Skate. Those are there, at least, but besides that, there's not really any high-profile extreme sports games coming out anymore, which
Mhm.
really blows. And, you know, it's also the same with, like, melee action games, because, you know, back in the day, there was so many... Those felt like a dime a dozen. You know, there was
Yeah.
like almost every like movie tie-in franchise or whatever was making one of those, and nowadays it feels a lot less common. And if they are making them, it's more like the new God of War, where it's more like movie focused. So yeah, I think it's time to go back in time and give us more extreme sports franchises, because those are fun as hell. I really miss those. And don't be afraid to make your games a little arcadey. I think DMC5 was a good trailblazer on that front. Hopefully Bayonetta helps people out. And who knows, maybe God of War 5 or whatever will zoom the camera out a little bit and be a little bit more like the old ones. I don't know. But anyway, this is kind of a random tangent. So
Yeah, I think we're definitely in the open world era right now, where those feel like a dime a dozen right now.
Definitely.
And I think we might start to see a trend back towards more linear, not necessarily
well-
linear, but like you described it when we were talking about the Outer Worlds a while, like not open world, but more
It's
designed
like-
paths.
it's like
I don't
Open
know.
District or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like a small portion of world, like kind of like Yakuza does as well, where it's not really open world like Grand Theft Auto. It's just like a bunch of city blocks
Mhm.
that are like closely tied together. It takes like a few minutes just to run across the entire map from one end to the other, but there's a lot of little secrets and stuff packed in there, which is often kind of preferred.
And also
compared
like
to,
Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think that was another game sort of like Devil May Cry 5 that harkens back to games that we used to have that really aren't made as frequently today.
Yeah, definitely. That game was fucking great. It would have been really crazy if that was a fixed camera angle game, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They were too afraid. But I think I heard someone say this. I think somebody made a video where it was called like Resident Evil 2 Remake. It wasn't what we asked for. Or something. It was like that was the title of the video, like not the
Mhm.
remake we asked for. And the video was kind of negative, but it's kind of like I don't know, because the game was really good. I do agree that, like, I think I saw a comment that said this, like, it wasn't the remake that we asked for, but what we got was so fucking good that I don't really care. Like, yeah, it would have been cool to have, like, a traditional fixed camera angle game, because that's another thing that's dead. You know, I think one of the last fixed camera angle games was, like, Silent Hill 3 back in 2003 or something. And nowadays, you know, there are some indie games that are harkening back to that style. Hell, I mean, there's even like at least 2 indie games that have like PS1 graphics, harkening back to Silent Hill and early Resident Evil games. Which is, it's funny that even though those art styles haven't aged nearly as well as like 8-bit and 16-bit, you know, there's still people that kind of want to see that art style come back. And even with games like Mario Odyssey, you know, you can play as Mario 64 in that game. And in the Resident Evil 2 remake, you can play as low poly Claire and Leon, which is still really cool. So people are still definitely attracted to that. But I don't know. I would like to see... Like, I don't want to sound like someone who's just like, oh, just keep remaking things, you know what I mean? But it is nice to see, like, old games come back, like Crash, where it's like, oh, we haven't seen a game like that in years and years and years. And it would be nice to see more PlayStation animals come back, like Sly Cooper. It'd be cool to have them back again, or even a new Jak and Daxter or something. But it feels like these companies get so set in their ways where it's like, I can't imagine Naughty Dog doing another Jak and Daxter ever again, because they're just going to make Last of Us, Neil Druckmann shit for years to come.
Unless they have some sort of like a smaller team that they break off to do more niche projects.
Yeah, and I forget, I don't even know what Sucker Punch is doing. They did Infamous for a while.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Right, and that, once again, harkens back to, kind of reminds me of God of War a little bit, where it's very slow-paced, and it's like this...
I mean, it's the Sony style now.
Yeah,
like, you just look at all their studios.
The Sony style, but it's just sad because it's like, it's hard to believe that this studio made the Sly Cooper franchise, because it's so different, and it seems like it had a completely different development mindset behind it. So I don't know, maybe I just wish sometimes people wouldn't be so concerned about being serious and mature. I guess I feel like, I don't know, now that's getting a little old nowadays. Like, I think there was a point where the market was probably oversaturated with like cartoony platformers, but now that we don't have those around anymore, it's kind of nice when one comes out. Like, I think the most recent example is probably Cuphead, because that is a platformer. They do have mascots that are really cute and cool, but, you know, Banjo isn't around anymore. It was cool to see him in Smash, but it's like, is he going to come back? Whereas Ratchet and Clank, I know the reboot wasn't, you know, perfect, but you don't have to stop completely just because the first one was kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
And Sly Cooper was always pretty successful. I don't know where Sly is, you know. I like to see that come back. And like I said, I think Devil May Cry coming back and being such a big success shows that you don't have to, you know, it's not like that style of gameplay is dated now or anything.
Yeah.
It's just as good as it always was. People just don't want to do that anymore because it's, I don't know, Kratos, if he double jumps, you can't take the story seriously. Some dumbass shit like that. Okay, whatever, fuck off. It's just stupid. But yeah, and actually, you know, you can say it about other things too. I guess like Rockstar's games, they're a little too concerned about you doing exactly what they want you to do, rather than the old games would just give you an objective and then it didn't really matter how you completed it. You just had to complete it, which I know it's harder to do because the stories become more and more complex, but I think that's something, you know, Rockstar needs to be conscious of as well. Don't be too, you know, like hand-holdy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully we'll see games go back to the, I don't know, maybe PS2 style or something. I don't know. See, the thing is with stuff like that, I think a lot of indie games kind of fill that void if you look for them. Because they're not really, afraid to do stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm rambling on different things now, so.
Yeah, I just had 2 other games real quick that I'll go over, both indie, and from a franchise that I've been wanting to get into for a while. SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2 I played recently, and it's weird to describe the genre because it's a 2D sort of exploration game where you're mining for these minerals. So like the first thing that some people might say is like, oh, Minecraft, but it's not really like Minecraft. There's this old game that I used to play on some sort of website like Addicting Games or Newgrounds called
Cool Math Games, shout out.
Yeah, Cool Math Games. It was called Motherload. I don't know if have you ever played Motherload?
I may have. You'd have to show me gameplay of it before I could really tell you that, though.
Basically, you were like this drill thing, and you would like dig down and get minerals, and you'd come back up, improve yourself so you could dig more minerals. And that's sort of what is going on in SteamWorld Dig. It stars a couple of these steampunk robots, and it's in like a western setting, so it's a pretty unique sort of style that the game has. You explore these different areas. You eventually move to like instead of it just being like dry rock, there's like this like poison swamp area with acid pools, and eventually you go to like this old forgotten high-tech robot area. So it's pretty cool. There's a couple of boss fights in the game. They're okay. They're not like amazing, but they're cool because it adds a little bit of variety from just digging and exploring and all this other stuff. You have different equipment that you can get and improve, and the story is basic, but overall it's just like a nice little indie game series, and they've spun it off into a couple of different titles. They have SteamWorld Heist, which I believe is like a tactical shooter kind of game. And they also recently came out with SteamWorld Quest, which is a card-based action game. So they have their own little franchise, and I believe all of the games are connected together. But they were fun indie games to play for a couple hours.
Yeah, those sound pretty cool. I always say, and I've said this for years, that like I want to get back into playing indie games, but I almost never do. It actually reminds me of a hard drive article that happened recently where it was something like a R Games user, like the subreddit for anyone who's confused about what I just said. Like R Games user complains about like people not supporting indie games, and then like when he gets questioned about it, he's like, well, you know, the new God of War is coming out, and I wanted to play that, and I'm pretty excited for Assassin's Creed, so I didn't really have enough money to buy those games. But yeah, when they're on sale in a couple years, I'll probably play them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, I do want to play them, but then I get attracted by the pretty lights of other things, and they just get pushed by the wayside. But every now and then I'll play an indie game. I think the last one I played was probably like Rhyme or Inside, and I liked Inside a lot, and Rhyme I just thought was okay.
Inside's been on my list for a while. I still haven't picked it up yet, but
yeah, that's a cool one. I don't know if that one had as much of an impact on me as Limbo did. I don't think it did, but it was a cool game. It's worth playing. And then, yeah, I liked Braid a lot whenever I played that. But that
I
was
watched
years
a
ago.
playthrough of Braid a long time ago, and I liked the time mechanics, but it seemed like a game that would piss me off. Just like the
It could be
puzzles
really
are
annoying,
really
but
indirect.
it's really worth playing. That's a cool game. The puzzles actually used to piss me off because I wanted to get every trophy for that game, and in order to do that, you had to speedrun the game in like 50 minutes, and holy shit, there was parts of that had me like ripping my hair out. Like even to this day, I can't even believe I completed it, because I feel like nowadays I wouldn't have the patience for something like that. And also, I did Limbo without getting hit once, because you had to do that for the final egg.
Yeah.
And I did that too, which is once again, it's like that. I guess it's been like so long since I did that, it almost feels like I never accomplished it. But I remember being on Xbox Live with you guys and Lyndon and Brian or whatever, and playing through Limbo, just restarting it over and over again, trying to get the final egg, and I finally fucking did it. And yeah, that's weird. I've never done anything that stupid again, which is probably I learned from stuff like that. I never really did anything that weird again. It's just too annoying. But yeah, I would like to play more indie games, but Control is coming out, so sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, if you're done with your stuff, I will finish with Dragon Quest.
That's pretty much all I've been playing, so.
And then we'll see if there's anything else we want to talk about briefly.
Let's hear about Muso game, huh?
Yeah, so I've been on a big Dragon Quest kick recently, and I think I've been wanting to play Dragon Quest 11 for a while, but the problem is that even though it's on PS3 or PS4, it doesn't have the orchestral soundtrack, which pissed me off, and I didn't have a PC at the time that could run Dragon Quest, so I was kind of shit out of luck. But then they announced the Switch version, which made me want to get a Switch, because that has a bunch of extra content and everything. But then I spent money on a new PC, So now I kind of just want to play Dragon Quest on there because the game's going to look a lot better. I can play it with a high frame rate, a few mods here and there, whatever. So there's just a lot of things that keep preventing me from playing Dragon Quest 11, but I still want to get that fix in without just playing one of the older ones. Like I still haven't played Dragon Quest 6 or 9. I can't play 10 because they never released it here. I started playing Dragon Quest 1 on my phone, which was okay, but as I was telling Nick, since it is like the first JRPG ever, it really is just kind of like walking around a world map and killing enemies until you can beat the next group of enemies on the next island, so it's really not that interesting. And I told Nick, since I have my new PC and I can play emulators again, I may just download like the Super Nintendo versions of those games, put on some cheats that just makes me like level 99 and just breeze through the game real quick, just to say like, you know, just to get the general story and gist of the world. I don't really feel too bad about grinding through those old games, just like I didn't feel bad about using the Easy Ring for Mother 1 whenever that released, that fan translation released. I think it made the game a much better experience. So anyway, I was still in the Dragon Quest mood, and since Dragon Quest has so many spin-offs, I decided to play one of those. I thought about playing Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime, which is like a I don't know how to describe it. It's like kind of like a tank battle game where you have you're obviously in your own big battle tank. The enemy has their big battle tank, but the game is controlled like a bird's eye view platformer. So you play as a little slime, and you have to like run around environments collecting materials and like putting them on conveyor belts to send back to your ship. And then when the battle starts, you go throughout your ship collecting the materials and like combining, I think, like different things and shooting them out your cannon towards the enemy battleship. It's very hard to describe, but it looks really cool. So I'd love to play it. I might show Nick a video of it just to show him what I'm talking about, because I thought it was just like a tank battle game, but it's like something completely different.
Was that a Western release?
Yeah, the only the second one. It's called
Oh.
Rocket Slime. The first one and third one have no official releases, but actually it's funny I mentioned that because the third one just got an official fan translation, so that's cool. But yeah, it's a very weird game. I just never bothered to look up much gameplay. I just looked at the back of the box and was like, yeah, okay, yeah, tank battles, whatever, but it's like completely different from what I thought it was going to be. So I heard it's very easy, but it's really fun, so it's kind of like a Kirby game, basically. But yeah, I'm not doing a good job describing it, and I haven't played it, so if anyone's interested in what I just said, which I know was like a jumble of words, just watch like a 10-minute review and see if you want to play it for yourself. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't want to play that, so I decided to go back to Dragon Quest Heroes, which is a game that I bought quite a few years ago. I feel like I bought it. It was one of the first games I bought for PS4 back in like 2015, or I don't know when I first got my PS4, maybe 2016 or some shit. But yeah, I played it for like 8 hours back then I dropped it because I got to a difficulty spike and it pissed me off, so I stopped playing it. But I decided to revisit it again, and I just finished it literally yesterday, right as I got off work. I was on the final battle, and like the night before I was on the final battle, and I couldn't beat it, and I was pissed off all Friday because I couldn't fucking do it. And then I made it my mission to go home after work and just fucking clear the game and finish it, put it on my shelf, and I did that. So anyway, Dragon Quest Heroes is probably actually it is the first Muso game I've ever played, and I guess technically the only one besides the sequel to this game. And I think at this point I can probably say that I am a Muso fan, but I could definitely see myself disliking the genre if it didn't have as much care put into it as Dragon Quest Heroes did. And if you have been hiding under a rock and don't know what a Muso game is, it's basically, in the West it's called Dynasty Warriors, or the Warriors franchise. And it's basically a franchise where you have a bunch of characters you can play as that all have kind of basic hack and slash movesets. You can pretty much memorize their moves in just a few minutes. And it typically involves you annihilating waves of enemies that come in large numbers, and you just fucking obliterate them. And you see like numbers and health bars obliterate in the blink of an eye. So for some people that's just really boring. totally understandable. But for others, it's a lot of fun. And if you don't like the Dynasty Warriors franchise, there's a lot of offshoots with different IPs that you may enjoy. Like if you're a One Piece fan, there's a bunch of One Piece games that you can play that you might get a kick out of if you're a big fan of that IP. There's Hyrule Warriors, where if you're a Zelda fan, you'll get a kick out of that because you can play as pretty much like all the major Zelda characters, even like the Gorons and the Rudos. And they typically have pretty creative movesets, often like Smash Brothers has really creative movesets, and Final Smashes and all these little details where, like, if you're a fan of the franchise, you're going to recognize that stuff and you're going to, have a smile on your face when you're playing the game. So, yeah, Dragon Quest is the same way. There's a lot of detail put into little things, and Dragon Quest Heroes was especially cool because it's kind of the type of game where, like, you have, two main heroes. There's a boy and a girl. You can choose whichever one you want to play as. And then throughout the course of the game, they kind of pull in characters from other Dragon Quest games to help you fight the main villain. So it's kind of just like a big celebration of Dragon Quest, and you get to see all these cool characters interacting with each other. And it's also cool because it's the first time a lot of these characters have ever had like a voice, or you've really just gotten to see them in motion, fully animated and everything. So that was a lot of fun for me, and especially for the Dragon Quest IV characters, because for whatever reason in the DS release of that game, they don't have party chat. And what party chat is basically whenever you're out on the field exploring, you can press the party chat button to hear what the rest of your party has to say. And that adds a lot of character to all of them. And so cutting that out basically means like you really don't get to know these characters at all. So it's like a ridiculous thing that they cut out of that DS release, but they added it back in for the iOS and Android ports. But that also means you have to play it on your shitty phone. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of a trade-off, but it was nice to finally see those characters fully realized. Because whenever I played it in 4, that they kind of join the party and really don't speak much till the end of the game. So that was cool to see. But and all the cutscenes are a lot of fun because they have Akira Toriyama's traditional art style, which is pretty much timeless. All the characters pop, and they're very pretty to watch and see how they animate, and same with all the monsters. Every monster in the game has a lot of character, and it's just fun to look at. So the cutscenes are super fun, and I'm not going to go that deep into the story, mainly because it's very simplistic. It's just like, oh, there's a bad guy who talks like Dracula, and he literally says like children of the night and everything, and whatever, oh, you're children of the light, but I'm a children of the night, and blah blah blah, all this stupid crap. And by the end it turns into like Kingdom Hearts bullshit where they defeat him with the power of friendship and stuff, and it's like, okay, this is really corny. I was never like not entertained by the story, but it's not really anything super impressive. And I also thought that the main characters, like I said, there's a girl and a boy. The girl's name is Aurora, the boy's name is Lucius. I thought Aurora was a cool character for the most part, but Lucius was really fucking annoying, and he was a fucking tool the entire game. And their relationship was like kind of funny at first, but they took one joke and stretched it out for like the entire length of cutscene, which is like 2 hours. So basically Lucius would just be like, they'd be in a bind, there'd be enemies coming toward them, and he'd just be like, oh, fear not, group, because I have a plan. First, we're going to rout the enemy from the left, and then you guys are going to flank it from the right, and then, should that prevail, we're going to blah blah blah, and then Aurora would just be like, okay, can you shut the hell up? We're just going to go fight these enemies and kick their ass. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. Okay, so that was funny the first few times, but they do that in every fucking cutscene, and it's like, wow, okay. I'm not a writer, but I could have written something at least different from that. Like, come on, like every single cutscene that happens, it's like, it's not that freaking funny. Like, it got so annoying as time went on. So luckily we're not really playing that game for the story.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's definitely more of a gameplay game, I feel. Than
Yeah,
a story.
and normally, like, a lot of the Dragon Quest games have really cool stories and everything. This one, I think, just because it was such a big crossover game, it can be hard to have an interesting story when you have so many things to balance. And also, I don't know if the story was written by the traditional Dragon Quest people, because the game was developed by Omega Force, which is a Koei Tecmo team. So I don't know. Like I said, it was very entertaining. It's, if you like Dragon Quest, you're going to have a lot of fun with the story. But it's really not the reason you're going to play the game. The reason you're going to play the game is, one, it's a celebration of Dragon Quest, and two, because it's a pretty fun Muso game. The reason why I say pretty is because the game kind of falls on its face kind of early on, because the most fun thing about Muso games, like I said, is just clearing out a bunch of enemies with a bunch of different characters and trying out all their different movesets and everything. But later on in the game, almost every mission becomes a tower defense mission, which is not fun at all. It's like you always have to protect some dumbass target that doesn't have a lot of health, and it feels like the game does not give you enough abilities or control over what you have to really deal with the situation. So for instance, you have your party members. There's 4 party members at a time, so you can choose which ones you want. Like some characters have, like there's a character named Elena who has really great combos, and she can like flip through the air and just beat the shit out of people. There's people that are more focused on magic, so they can buff the party up and make them stronger or lower the enemy's defense. There's one chick who's by far the best character in the game, Bianca, who is like an archer, and she can just kick everyone's ass from far away. So the point is that you can kind of form your party by, you know, mixing and matching a diverse group of characters to your liking. So you have that at your disposal and their movesets, but you also have monsters that you can recruit on the field. So basically you have monster medals you can collect. So every now and then, whenever you kill a monster, you can collect their medal, and then you can set them out to fight for you while you're doing battle. So one kind is a sentry type, where they'll basically like launch into battle, do a big attack, and then they'll stay in the general area that you set them at. There's one that's just like a big screen clearing attack, and there may be one other one. I think I might be thinking of something in Dragon Quest Heroes too. So I'm just going to say there's those 2 type of enemies that you can use to your advantage. The problem with that is that you cannot really control them at all beyond saying, okay, here, I'm just going to launch you right here. The problem with this is that, like, let's say you have a target in the middle of a square or something, and you tell them to defend something in the north, like go fight these enemies coming from the north. Then after you kill those enemies, there's going to be something called a Maw Keeper that is basically a little enemy that will continuously spawn enemies out of a portal from a different direction. So even though there's like no enemies coming from the north and there's people coming from the southwest now, you can't tell that monster to go over to the southwest and start fighting there. He's just going to sit his ass there in the north for the entire rest of the battle unless you just kick him out of your team and grab more monster medals.
Yeah,
so you have
weird.
like no control over it after that.
So it's kind of like a consumable almost. Like you just tell him to go over there, and then he's just gonna stay there.
Yeah, he'll stay there until he dies, or you know abort him or whatever. Or that's not the right word to use, but you know, just dismiss him. That's the right word. That's really annoying because it's like, and it's the same thing with your party where they just kind of like follow you around everywhere, and they don't really help you that much. They kind of just stand around for the most part unless you take control of them. And it would be helpful if you could send some of your party members over to like a different, bottleneck where the enemies are coming in from.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no options like that. The closest is you get a spell called Zoom at one point in the game, which allows you to zoom to different zoom stones in around the map.
Zoom stones.
Yeah, zoom. So if there's enemies pouring in from the northeast, you can zoom over there and start fighting them there, and then zoom back if you want, which helps a little bit. But the point is that there's all these tower defense missions, and I feel like they often don't give you enough resources to really tackle them fully. And I never had to retry any of them too often. I think the most I ever had to do was like maybe I had to try it 3 times or something before I got it. But they just aren't that fun. They're all very frustrating. As the game goes on, the enemies start to, especially like the little mini-boss enemies, they have like an insane pool of health, and they smack you around really hard, so you just have to keep wailing and wailing and wailing, doing the same combo over and over again until the enemy fucking falls. And that gets really boring. And I think my love of Dragon Quest and I think my love of Dragon Quest just carried me through the game. I feel like if you did not have any attachment to the series, you would not be able to finish it. Because it just wasn't that fun. It wasn't like Brutal Legend, where like it literally became a completely different genre of game halfway through and completely shot itself in the head and ensured that I would never play that game ever again. I mean, I'm not gonna play through this game again because it got way too annoying with the tower defense crap. But at least this game still had the same hack and slash moveset in gameplay the entire way through. You just had to protect a lot of things as the game went on, and it got really goddamn annoying. Especially because sometimes these battles go on for like 15-20 minutes, so if you fail right at the end, you're repeating 20 minutes of content. And as I've said before, the Muso games are very repetitive. They're basic hack and slash games. You know, basically the combos are like, you can do square, 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 or square, triangle, square, square, triangle, square, you know, etc. There's that, and then there's like, you can hold R2 and press square, triangle, circle, or X. That's more or less it for the character's moveset. You know, you can also like hold triangle for some things, jump up in the air, hold triangle or square, and fight in the air. But for the most part, that's a character's, you know, moveset. So you're gonna, you know, learn them very quickly, and you're just gonna fight a lot of the same enemies. And most of them are pretty brain dead, besides the big boys that are really annoying.
I've heard the Muso games are good podcast games. Just put a
They
podcast on and
Yeah,
play them.
I wouldn't recommend Dragon Quest Heroes for it because just way too much tower defense stuff, and it's just not that fun. Like I said, if you had more options to turn the tide of battle, it'd be okay, but for the most part, it just feels like, I don't know, you either have to get lucky or just, I don't know. It just wasn't that fun. I mean, I finished the game, but the game starts off a lot better than it ends. So, I mean, overall, I would say the game is pretty good, and I am probably a Muso fan at this point because I've been playing a little bit of the second one, and I do like that game. And also, that game has basically no tower defense shit.
That's good.
From what I've heard, which once again, it's like one of those things where I don't know if they had to cut it out completely. They could have just made some adjustments to it, and it would have been okay. At the same time, I'm not really complaining that it's not there anymore. So. Yeah, overall, I would say the game is really, really cool. If you're not a Dragon Quest fan, I don't know if I'd really recommend it unless you're a big Muso fan. Like, if you just like Muso games in general, sure, go for it. It's fun. I mean, the game runs at a rock-solid 60 FPS, 1080p. That's what we like to see. And the characters are all really fun to play for the most part. There's a few of them I really didn't like. There was one that like threw a boomerang and I just couldn't get into the moveset. There was one that was fat and slow and it was just too slow for me. I mean, one annoying thing about the characters, by the way, is that since they all, like, it is an RPG, technically, like an action RPG, they do gain levels. And it's one of those games where, like, if you bench the characters, they gain levels at a much slower rate than the characters that are currently in your party. So that kind of just encourages you to find one group of characters you like to play as and just play with them the entire game, which is okay. It's just kind of annoying when there's like 8 characters or something like on the bench that it would be nice to mix up the gameplay with, but it's like you get so far into the game where it's like these characters are 10 levels behind these current ones where like
no way they're gonna live.
Yeah, they won't live, and it's like, yeah, you could go to other battles and grind them up, but it's like, who the hell wants to do that? You know, it's like, this game is already kind of repetitive. I don't really want to add extra shit to my plate already.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was a little annoying, but I formed an ass-kicking party, pretty much, and they were all pretty fun to play as. So, yeah, overall, is Dragon Quest Heroes good? Yeah. But it has a lot of issues, and I don't think I'll ever play it again. But luckily, we have Dragon Quest Heroes 2, which is a much better game so far. And I'll tell you why. Because Dragon Quest Heroes 2 feels a lot more like a traditional Dragon Quest game, but with hack and slash gameplay. The first one basically just had like set levels that you went through, and then they just ended, and then you went back to your hub world or whatever. And when you went back there, you could either like change your equipment around and upgrade that, or you could take on quests, or you know, craft things and stuff like that, like a typical Dragon Quest game. But this one is cool because it actually has like an overworld that you get to explore around in. just like the mainline console games like Dragon Quest 8 and 11. Excuse me. But instead of doing turn-based gameplay, you do hack and slash Muso gameplay, which is really, really fun. And I haven't gotten too far into the game yet, only about 3 hours, but I can already tell you that, like I said, there's no more tower defense stuff. It's mainly just kicking ass and slaughtering groups of enemies. The only real complaint I have with the game so far is that some of the bosses, I mean all the bosses, have way too much health. Like, they're not that hard. They just go on and on and on forever, and it's just like, holy shit, like, this is not that fun. But so far I think it's better than the first one. So yeah, not much more to say, I guess. I'm interested to hear what you think of Hyrule Warriors. I would say if you don't like that game, you're not going to like any Muso game at all.
Yeah. If Zelda can't get me to like a game, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. So, yeah, overall, I would say if you're a Dragon Quest fan, totally play it, because it's an awesome celebration of the franchise. It's a lot of fun to see all the characters interact. If there's a certain character you were really attached to in a particular Dragon Quest game, you'll probably get the chance to play as them. Although, admittedly, they really only focus on characters from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's about it. So if you're a fan of characters from 1 through 3, which admittedly, I don't think there was any other characters besides the protagonist in 1. Yeah, no one gives a shit about the characters in those games anyway, so it's okay. But yeah, there's a lot of characters to play as, and it's a lot of fun. You just get to kick a lot of ass. So yeah, it's good. Whatever. Let's move on to a different Dragon Quest game. Dragon Quest Builders. I only played
the Minecraft clone.
Yes, I only played the demo of Builders 2 because they didn't have a demo for Builders 1. But tomorrow, I'm actually going to get Builders 1 in the mail. I bought that game because it was a lot cheaper than the second one, which just came out recently. But I know Builders got a really, really good critical reception along with the second one. And a lot of people that didn't even give a shit about Minecraft played it and really fucking liked it. A lot of Dragon Quest fans liked it. And I mean, I was skeptical of it too whenever I first heard of it. Like, okay, Dragon Quest is trying this Minecraft shit. Like, it feels really weird and out of place. But apparently it's really good. And from what I played of the demo, which was actually a really cool demo, you got to play through the entire tutorial. And then you basically had, like, the entire first island to do whatever the hell you wanted to on it. So if you really wanted to start, getting building and making houses and stuff, you could probably do some cool things with it. But the point is that you could play it for a really long time and really get a feel for the game, which is important, because if they had just played the tutorial, I might be a little apprehensive about it. But yeah, the game is, like Minecraft, but from what I noticed, I mean, first of all, it's set in the world of Dragon Quest, which has a lot more personality than the world of Minecraft. It has an ongoing plot. I know in the first game, you're kind of trying to protect the kingdom from the evildoer trying to destroy the kingdom, and that actually takes place, I think, after the events of Dragon Quest 1 or in the world of Dragon Quest 1, which is kind of cool, and it kind of enhances the story if you're familiar with that game. So you like build towns and let people live in the towns and whatever. And I guess same with Dragon Quest Heroes 2, but all the while you get to like fight enemies and go on side quests and stuff like that.
Is there a lot of like resource gathering? Like, is it like Minecraft in that way where you're going out to get materials to be able to build?
Yeah, you have to gather the materials and stuff like that. So it is a Minecraft clone, but there definitely seems to be a lot more to it. And I'm definitely going to return to this topic whenever I played them more in depth. And I would say that I never disliked Minecraft, so it's not like I'm surprised that I'm into this right now.
Mm-hmm.
But adding Dragon Quest to the formula helps out a lot, because I like that franchise a lot. And one cool thing is that there's like a bulletin board that you can like check out people's worlds. They take pictures of the worlds, and you can check out their worlds and explore and either get inspiration from their worlds, or if you see a structure that they made in their world and you really like it, you can save that structure and bring it into your own world and put it somewhere.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. And like I said, you can also explore their worlds too if you want. So yeah, it is like a Minecraft clone, but it's like cool, unlike Minecraft. So
I have one question. I don't know if you can answer it or not, just based on how little you've played so far. But I guess you were saying they're islands. So is it like at a certain point there's like a defined like end to wherever you're exploring at, and it's just like water, or like how is the world space? Is it?
yeah, I think they're mostly like surrounded by water to a point, but I mean the game does have like an ending. You know, there are like 10 chapters, and then the game ends. I mean, of course, I'm sure you can just keep building for hours and hours and hours,
Yeah.
forever if you want, but the game, like, it has the big difference between this and Minecraft is that I think it has a bigger emphasis on being an RPG story, whereas Minecraft is just like, yeah, you can build shit if you want.
It's a big sandbox, basically, is
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Yeah, whereas this has a bit more of a direction and a point to everything you're doing. And like I said, having Dragon Quest, you know, all the freaking characters are cutesy wootsy. Like, my fucking character I created was like fucking adorable, and you can take all these selfies with them, and it's just hard not to smile while you're playing the game, which is how I feel about a lot of Dragon Quest things, but especially this one because everyone is like a little cheapy thing, and all the monsters are funny and they all have funny accents and everything. So yeah, like I said, I wish there was more I could say about it, but I'm gonna have to wait until I play them. But I will say that, you know, the first impression was really, really good, and I'm super excited to get into that game. And I'm super happy that it did really well. I don't know exactly how many copies the first one sold, but I want to say it sold like 1 million copies in the West, which is a really big deal for Dragon Quest. I don't think that's worldwide sales. I want to believe 1 million copies were sold in the West, because that makes me happier. But that might, I don't know, it might be worldwide sales. I don't know. The point is that the first one was a really big success. So I'm happy that the second one is hopefully going to be a big success too. And
I've been hearing some pretty good reviews for the
Yeah.
second one. So
yeah, everyone seems to like the second one. I think they improved pretty much all the problems with the first one. I think the biggest flaw that I know a lot of people had issues with is after the end of each chapter in the first one, they would like demolish everything you built. Or I don't know if they demolish it, but like it was confined to that one chapter. So I think some people would get like really into the story and building and everything, and they just like go fucking nuts with structures and like building their towns and letting people live in them, and they'd probably spend like 20 hours doing that,
Yeah.
taking their time, going to the next chapter, and then everything is start from square one. I know I've heard many anecdotes that people just stop playing. It's like, I don't want to do that all over again. That's bullshit. So they stopped doing that with the second one, and I think that made a lot of people really happy. So you can, you know, develop your kingdoms more and more over time. So yeah, I will let you guys know whenever I actually get the chance to play that, and I'll hopefully be able to go into more detail as to why people like it so much more than Minecraft, or why some people do at least. Because right now, I mean, it is a Minecraft clone for sure, but there's definitely more to it than just, you know, being Minecraft in Dragon Quest World. And the last thing I will say is we played a lot, or at least I played a lot of Dragon Quest Hero today in Smash Brothers, who I've been super excited about, and he is fucking awesome. I know there's a lot of competitive people out there that hate him right now because he's so random and he's like goes against their competitive spirit, but sometimes you got to take the Daniel Chadworth approach and just play with the items on and realize how much fucking fun he is. Don't worry about, you know, not showering and being at a tournament around other smelly people. Just play the game and have fun with it. He's fucking dope. And I don't think he's like, I don't think he should be banned at a tournament either, just because he has random elements to him, you know. He's fucking cool.
Yeah, just
So-
based off we were playing a lot of it earlier before we started recording this. I had purchased the Battle Pass, so we got access to Joker and Hero from Dragon Quest. And I really like how unique they were able to make the Hero. I know a big complaint with Smash Ultimate in particular is how many sword users they've added into the game.
Yeah, I mean, particularly Fire Emblem characters, because I know that Fire Emblem randomly like became one of their flagship franchises after Awakening, but I think they went a little overboard with having like so many Fire Emblem characters in the game.
Yeah, they
It's
definitely
a little
did.
ridiculous.
But The thing that makes the hero cool, other than it being from Dragon Quest and a franchise that was never supported in Smash Brothers, is that they have the little RPG window with different moves that you can select, and I think that completely changes how you play it. And I actually, like you said, I like how there are random moves in there, because even while you're playing, there's something that you're always going to have to pay attention to. It's just like, alright, what are my moves that I can choose here? What's going to best be most advantageous in this moment that I can use? And I think that's really cool about his playstyle.
Yeah, it's interesting how they did it. I think he has like maybe 10 or 15 different spells that he could use in total, and at any given time you only have 4. But if you don't like the spells you have, you can kind of cancel the window and open it back up again. And each time you use a spell, it uses a different amount of MP. So you do have an MP meter, and to get that back, you just smack your opponent around a bit. So there's all these different spells from the games. Like there's Kamikaze, where, you know, like it sounds, you can explode and kill yourself, but take your enemy with you if they're at a high enough percentage. There's a spell called Thwack, which is, there's a chance that it'll cause instant death to your enemy, and that it becomes more and more likely the higher the percentages, but there is a possibility that you can get a Thwack at 0% and kill your enemy outright, which is pretty crazy. There's fire spells, ice spells. There's a spell that allows you to turn into metal, which I guess would be helpful if someone was about to do a final smash on you. You could do that and then be completely null and void to the whole thing. You can have a shield on you, which reflects any projectiles. You can cast Zoom, which, like, I guess you would want to cast that if, like, you were about to, like, self-destruct on, or not self-destruct, but like fall off the stage, and the recovery wouldn't make it. You could cast Zoom and then reach the main island again. So there's all these different fun spells from the Dragon Quest series that you can use, and like Nick said, you really have to be thinking on the fly, because you bring up the menu, and you can even bring up, like, when you're jumping through the air, and you can look through it real quick and then cast something when you get back down to the ground. But it's a lot of fun to use. And also, one thing I noticed is that since, like, your character comes to a complete standstill whenever you're using the menu, they do allow you to change your attack direction after you select the input. So if you're facing to the right and your enemy's coming from the left, and you, let's say you click like Hatchet Man or Hatchet Slash or whatever the hell it's called, which is just like a super powerful overhead slash. Even though you're facing to the right already, you can click it to the left and then smash it in their face or whatever, which is nice, because I think if they didn't do that, it would have been way too annoying, because, someone could easily just jump over you and then you're like, hey, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So that way you can control it a bit more. The final smash is super cool because he has like all the heroes from Dragon Quest that aren't in the game. They come together and just do a big Giga Slash, which is a lot of fun. His stage is pretty cool too. It's Yggdrasil's something, like platformer fountain or something. I haven't played Dragon Quest XI yet, so I'm going off what I remember from the game. But excuse me, it's pretty cool.
Like any other DLC character, it's just a big celebration of Dragon Quest.
Yeah, and there's a lot of little details. The fact that you can play as 4 different Dragon Quest heroes is really nice, and the recolors, some of them are recolors of Dragon Quest like main characters, some of them are recolors of just popular side characters, which is cool because, for instance, I think Dragon Quest V's hero is the most popular in Japan, so a lot of people thought it was weird that he wasn't in the game, but I think the reason why he's not is just because he's like a mage user rather than like a sword user, so they didn't want to have him in there. But he is one of Erdrick's alternate costumes, which is pretty cool how they were able to put that in the game. But anyway, yeah, I had a shitload of fun playing as him, and whenever I do eventually buy a Nintendo Switch, I would love to get all the Smash Brothers characters. I only played a little bit as Joker, so I don't have as much to say, but the hero was fucking awesome. And to end my point about Dragon Quest, I just hope that with the release of the hero in Smash Brothers, it brings more attention to the Dragon Quest franchise, and with Dragon Quest XI's coming out in September, that causes a lot of people to try the franchise out and hopefully fall in love with it. At least I know for sure that 11 is a great fucking game, even though I haven't played it. I've seen enough of it to know that it's the next Dragon Quest 8. I don't know if I'll like it more than 8, but it's just a fucking good-ass video game that I think a lot of people will really love. And hopefully people can start respecting Dragon Quest and not acting like a-holes because they're ignorant of the franchise's importance. That would be really ideal. And, you know, like usual, Nintendo shows that they can market Dragon Quest much better than Square Enix ever could. Same thing happened with Dragon Quest 9, which sold over 1 million copies. Once again, I don't know if it's like a worldwide thing or just in the US, or, you know, in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But it sold really, really well because Nintendo marketed the shit out of it, and it reviewed well and sold well. Then you look at what Square does with their games, and they barely marketed Dragon Quest 8 at all because they were too busy chizzing about Kingdom Hearts 3. If they would have marketed it as hard as they did that game, I'm sure it would have sold even better. It sold like 600,000 over here or something, which is okay, but not ideal, obviously. And but it's like, you know, it's just sad, you know. It's fucking annoying because it's like with Final Fantasy 15, like that game isn't even that good, and they marketed it so fucking hard because they were gonna lose money on it, like regardless, because of how long it was in development and everything. But it's like, if you push Dragon Quest that hard, like I guarantee you, it'll become popular over here. You can't just have like one trailer tucked away at E3 and then have spend the entire E3 talking about Kingdom Hearts or whatever and expect the franchise to grow. Like, it's not going to work that way. So Nintendo is stepping in and hopefully adding a great deal of popularity to the franchise, just like what happened with Bayonetta. A lot of people got into Bayonetta through that. A lot of people got into Fire Emblem through playing Smash Brothers Melee. Same with Earthbound and Mother because of Ness and Lucas. So hopefully that's the next thing coming for Dragon Quest. That would be really, really nice. I think the franchise absolutely deserves it, and if nothing else, it really deserves the respect of the community at large. Instead, you know, most people are too concerned about talking about Tidus's really bad outfit in Final Fantasy X and the memories they made in that game. That game's not that good, okay? And you're gonna play Dragon Quest 8 and you're gonna realize you made a mistake. Just like when you tried to pick God of War for the Game of the Year, even though Red Dead clearly deserved it more. The people who picked God of War over Red Dead wear socks with sandals and think Final Fantasy was a better franchise than Dragon Quest, which means you're a dumbass. That's really the biggest conclusion Nick and I both have to make for this podcast. So I think we're going to end it here because there's not much else to talk about at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little tired of talking, and I want to have a sweet snack. So we're going to end it here. I'm just going to tell you to play a Dragon Quest game. If you have a Switch, wait for Dragon Quest XI S to come out. If you have a PS4, you can play Dragon Quest XI. It doesn't have the orchestrated soundtrack, which I know kind of sucks, but it's still a great game. It's available on PC. If you have a 3DS, you can play Dragon Quest 7 or 8 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 9. So you have a lot of options there. You can play Dragon Quest 1 through 3. Actually, you can play 1 through 6 on your fucking phone. Actually, you can play 1 through 8, I think, on your phone. So there's really no excuse, okay? They're not very hard games to get your hands on. So play them and stop, you know, crying over Squall in Final Fantasy VIII or whatever.
Play the game.
Play the game. And get wrecked by Hero Online, all you Banjo dick riders.
Well,
hey,
on that...
Hey, oh, has Banjo had a game in many years? Nope, he's relevant, bitch.
Well, on that note, check out our other podcasts here on YouTube, and also follow us on Twitter at PixelsGradient. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, Dragon Quest fans, rise up.
We'll see you next time.
Da 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 da. Love and respect.